Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Welcome, and I'm so happy to see so many people here in the audience. My name is Annie Brewster, as Vicki just said. I am a doctor. I'm also a patient. I have MS myself. I run a nonprofit called Health Story Collaborative, and what we do is work with individuals who are navigating challenges, illness, trauma, loss, to tell their stories in community. And we really believe that storytelling can be healing for both the individuals who are sharing, but also for the audience members. So we're really pleased to have had Kristine and Annie go through this process, and I just want to acknowledge how much hard work it is and how much courage it takes to stand up here and to share with all of you. And it's really a gift to all of us. I'm sure there are going to be parts of the stories that resonate with all of you. And then your job as an audience is really to just be witnesses. So you're here to listen and to see what resonates with you. And afterwards, we're going to have a question and answer session. So here's how it's going to run. We're going to have Kristine share. Then we'll transition right away to have Annie share. And then I'm going to bring them both up together and we're going to have a question and answer session. And then we're going to have some wine if people want it. So, so that's how it's going to go. Again, just as the audience, your job is to be supportive witnesses in this journey. And recognizing that it really does take a lot. And these two have done an amazing job, and I want to thank them for their courage. And also I want to thank Vicki for being so helpful in facilitating this and making this possible. So I'm going to turn it over to the stars of the show, and Kristine is going to take it away.
Thank you, everyone. Like Dr. Annie said, I'm Kristine. I've been a resident of the Boston home now for a little over 6 years, and this is my story. At 23, I felt rebellious. Living in Albany, New York, working in a corporate job was dark and gloomy. My college friend told me about this town on the Cape, Provincetown. So in May of 1997, I decided to quit my job and look for a summer employment in this beautiful beach resort. The summer job I found was in a B&B, which turned out to be a long-term, year-round property management position, which turned into me becoming a Massachusetts resident. I built a life for myself there. I fell in love, made friends, and found a community in this small, friendly town. I found Cape Cod and the ocean, and it seemed like life could not get any better. But in October of 2002, when I was 29, I was out with some friends celebrating the end of a very hectic season. We were dancing at one of the oldest bars in P-Town, the Atlantic House, and suddenly I took a spell and fell dizzy. I attributed it to maybe many cocktails, because I was partying still, I was still young. The following week, my sister Kara invited me to Killington, Vermont for the weekend to celebrate her birthday. My parents were going to be there. My family had always been close-knit. So driving up, I noticed, though, that I was feeling some vertigo, not to mention that my right hand and my right arm were a little tingling. With the excitement of seeing my family, I hoped it would pass. I attributed it to the elevation of Killington, but by the end of the weekend, I knew this was not true, as I was trying to hold on to the railing just to walk down the stairs. I didn't want to ask any questions, and I didn't want to tell my family because I was afraid of burdening, and my mother was always very doting and would sometimes over-worry. On arriving home, though, I immediately made an appointment with my GP, in which he ordered an MRI, and he said that it was definitely related to my central nervous system and my brain, which made me very nervous, fearing that it was a brain tumor. My right eye was painful and flickering, as well as my vision was diminished. Then I developed numbness in my right arm, followed by weakness in my legs, and more vertigo. It was the fear that really crippled me the most. I was too scared to ask questions. I just wanted to curl up and just sit in the corner like a child. I was still young then. I didn't have the strength to respond to what was happening. After waiting a whole weekend, my doctor finally told me the results of the MRI, probable MS. My first thought was, for 2 seconds, well, it's not a brain tumor, but then I broke down, and I was like, this is life-altering news. Upon receiving the diagnosis, I told my partner, Carrie, that she did not have to stay and go through this. I felt guilty. And she said, no, absolutely not. I want to be here for you, which made me feel really lucky. At the time, Carrie and I were caretakers of the small colony unit. I quickly retired. Such a rigorous and physical job. Carrie was on my side throughout this whole first year of treatment. She drove me weekly to Beth Israel Hospital in Boston for the first month of my treatment. Luckily, we found VNA services on the Cape, so I quickly realized how lucky I was to have such a loving partner. Family support, friends came over, we had potlucks. I knew I had a long road ahead of me, but I felt confident, surrounded by friendship and love. But by the following spring, my second consecutive flare-up of MS occurred, causing bilateral optic neuritis. Bilateral optic neuritis, occurring only in 5 to 8% of MS patients. It rendered me legally blind, with one eye presenting at 400/20 and the other 200/20. This prompted my doctor to recommend Cytoxin, a chemotherapy drug that is used for patients with aggressive MS. This would kill those nasty blood cells that were attacking aggressively my brain. And it worked, actually. I was like, wow. I lost some hair though. I lost a little weight. Lost the hair wasn't good, but the weight was good. But I felt empowered. I got through this first battle. By July, my MRI showed that the lesions had gone down and receded. And I even regained some of my vision back, which was a miracle. And I couldn't wait to call my mom and tell her the good news. And I remember hearing like a little, a slight in her voice. And I thought, oh, it surprised me. I'm sorry. I remember hearing a faint cry in my mother's voice, which surprised me. I said, oh, I've taken her love for granted. My mom and I became closer. She would call me a lot and tell me, watch me, ask me what I was eating. And my dad would send me articles from the New York Times about the latest updates on MS research. And I felt really loved by both of them. Yeah. Here I was with my body back, knowing that time was precious. As I have learned, this disease is progressive. I would never take anything for granted or anyone. I could stand up straight and walk, such as running down the beach, taking it all in. I was going to make it. Inspired by this recovery, I took control and researched what to do, what to eat, to nourish my body and feel good. I became neurotic about food and eating plenty of fruits and fish, which is obviously abundant in Provincetown. I ran every day, about 30 minutes, went to the gym almost every day. I learned the benefits of maintaining strength and endurance in order to have a fit body. I could no longer drive, so my main source of transportation became my bike. I learned other healing techniques like acupuncture and yoga, but I overdid it with the yoga. I had mats all over the apartment, and that drove my partner, Carrie, crazy. So, in 2004, we're getting there, we moved to a more convenient apartment in town. At the time, there were not too many options for treatment. So I was on an interferon drug once a week. Carrie would stab me with my IV injection of Avonex. The only side effect was a little headache and some fatigue, which for me was like just a hangover, and I was fine the next day. Then I found out it only had 33% efficacy. And it also turned out to elevate my liver enzymes. My GP asked me one time, "Are you drinking a lot?" And I said, "No." Because your liver enzymes are elevated. And I was like, she knew I was sick and trying to get stable. And I just felt. Anyway, my doctor put me on a new medicine, and he did confirm that it was the Avonex that did elevate my liver enzymes. In fact, they had a class act lawsuit against them. But they gave me, my doctor put me on Copaxone, which had the same efficacy, but it was something. So I decided also to take matters into my own hands, knowing that I would have this disease my whole life. I found out that acupuncture is helpful. I eliminated dairy and gluten from my diet, exercises, and prayed. Yes, I became spiritual again. I had been raised Catholic, and it was there for me then, and God would be there for me now. And for me, that God, I call the gift of desperation. If something brings you to your knees, I'm lucky that I have God. I feel like my beautiful life was synchronistic, coming to Massachusetts and moving to Provincetown, meeting my first love. If that had not happened, I would not be in Massachusetts with the best health care and insurance for people with disabilities. I really don't think I would be here without my spirituality too. You have to believe in something bigger than yourself. It had been clear by the early part of 2005 that Carrie and I were approaching the end of our relationship, the end of our chapter. After 8 years together, we decided to end our relationship, not because of the yoga mats, as amicably as possible. So I rented a room in town with a friend. In November of 2006, I was invited to a potluck dinner by a friend. That's where I met Heather, the daughter of the host. She asked me who brought the sushi, and I said I did because I didn't have any time to make anything. It was not true. Just lazy. But I did feel strong and confident for the first time in a while. Just a normal, social, healthy 33-year-old. In the back of my mind, though, I was saying, well, I'm still partying. Why am I partying still? Kristine, WTF? Stop it. Well, I did. I stopped drinking, ate better, and became healthier. But what saved me was that Heather was very much invested in my MS. I had told her on our first date on December 15th, 2006, I had MS. She responded that she had a similar neurological event happen as well, but it did not turn out to be MS. Anyway, she did not care. That's a big bombshell to drop on a first date. How lucky was I? Heather was instrumental in getting me to a better place, because with love, anything is possible. I stopped drinking. She was my biggest cheerleader. She was supportive on my health program and regimen. We had so much fun together. From the time I met Heather, I've been on 3 to 4 different types of medication for MS, during which I was deteriorating physically. This was always there to catch me. Heather, that is. Heather was always there to catch me, literally. Hold me up and say, stay strong and keep fighting. She took me to every appointment, and when she could not, her mother Ellie did. Yes, I inherited a mother-in-law that came with the package. And we became very close, and she became part of my MS team. So fast forward, on my 40th birthday, I went to my neurology appointment, accompanied by Heather and my sister Kara. We were planning on going out to have a celebratory lunch afterwards, but unfortunately, my neurologist declared me to be secondary progressive MS. Reality set in at that point. So, happy birthday to me. Luckily, I had the support of Kara and Heather, and the security that they would be there for me. So I focused on having something to look forward to. Heather had surprised me with a trip to Sedona, Arizona, which was amazing and beautiful. Went to the Grand Canyon. Freedom. With the lack of humidity there, though, I was able to walk for 20 yards. But I knew it wouldn't last, but still, something to hold on to and remind you to stay in the moment. By summertime, I was officially using a walker and a mobility scooter. Accepting the state of my disease, knowing I had support and love, I still wanted to be part of life. I wasn't ready to throw in the towel and isolate myself in prison of disability and disease. I worked during the summer as a hostess at a restaurant. I always loved people, and I felt empowered to be there, strong in the middle of town, because this was my town. I knew I was pushing it too much, especially in the summer heat. As we all know, with MS, heat will exacerbate you. And so Heather would throw me these ice packs at work to put on me, like we're on a team. She'd be like, here, pull down, and it works. 6 months later, I had started Rituxan, and then every 6 months you're on Rituxan. So 6 months later, I had a second dose of Rituxan infusion. Heather could not come, so her mother did. I felt comforted and loved. Heather called me, though, that night to see how the appointment went. I noticed that she did not sound good, a little tired and weak, slurred speech even. I did not have a good feeling at all. I thought, there's all this tension focused on me. She needs to help herself, and then I need to help her. So I told her to take care of herself. But the next morning, I woke up, I jolted up. I thought I was dizzy. I thought it was the side effects from the previous infusion. But then I got a phone call from Heather. It was Heather's number, but it was not Heather. And the person on the other line, which was Heather's friend, said, Kristine, are you sitting down? And I said, obviously. But I didn't say that. And then I kind of, my chest sunk in, because when someone says that, you know they're going to say after. Something not good. But she said, Kristine, Heather has passed away. And I said, whatever breath was in me, I just said, what? I was frozen, paralyzed with my mouth open. So my friend took me over to see her mother, at which point I finally just lost it. Apparently it was a brain aneurysm that occurred overnight, and I didn't get the full details. But Ellie and I ended up having lunch weekly and staying in touch. In the meantime, while I was trying to grieve, I was also trying to figure out my life. You know, I sought help for my mental health, and I had to get help for my regular daily care. During this time, a friend of mine had lost her job and her housing, so I said that she could move in, she could live with me, thinking it would be a win-win. And she could help me with my daily care. At the time, I had no time to make decisions. I was just determined to stay in my home. So I made my friend Mary my caregiver, and we signed up for the adult foster program. It was soon clear to me that I had made the wrong decision. She was controlling, verbally abusive, and even physically threatened me once. And then she would threaten to drop me off at the local geriatric nursing home like you would drop off a baby in front of a firehouse. And so my sister came to visit me and said, "You got to do something. You got to get out of here." I thought to myself, I still have my voice and my mind. I am not going to let this woman run my life and ruin what I have left. With the help of my therapist and Kara, I found the courage to stand up for myself. My breaking point came one day when Mary was being extra unreasonable and rude. And I said to myself, you need me more than I need you. It was like a primal thing that came out of me. I just grabbed it, and I felt so empowered. I was surfing the web, and that's when I came across the Boston home, because I did not want to go to a geriatric home. And I called. I was scared of leaving my home of 20 years. And the few people I still had left. But I also felt hopeful. I had been in a very dark place, losing the love of my life, and my disease quickly deteriorating had left me isolated. I no longer had Heather, but I remembered her telling me, "You don't have to live like this, imprisoned in your little apartment." Her love still carried over with me. So I made the decision. Some change had to come. I gave it over to God and said, if there's a bed available, the Boston home, it's meant to be. Upon receiving the news that I was accepted to the Boston home, I had mixed feelings of excitement and fear. After being so dependent on one person and living in a small apartment, this would be where I would find my strength and courage that I bounded up in me. It would need to come out. Miraculously, within months, Lucille, the admissions director at the time, welcomed me with such love and compassion. Just another reminder, never give up, don't throw in the towel. You never know. This would be my new home, where I could feel myself, or at least be myself in my own four wheels, so to speak. I made some friends, laughed, and we commiserated. There is always room for growth in every situation. It was refreshing to be around folks who have just been through a similar journey. We would commiserate and reflect on our own experiences. Everything about MS and the possibility of healing and recovery had taken over my life. So, the past 20 years, now I can relax and be just around people who all came from different shores, but here we all together. And even if we have to say F it sometimes, we commiserate or we find love together to do it. Being disabled, my biggest fear was losing my power, because I felt like my power was my body. But I realized as long as I had my mind and my voice, I could regain the power I thought I lost. I learned to hold on to that power and use my voice. because I came across this quote when I was at my lowest. Talk about not throwing in the towel. Always remember that your present situation is not your final destination. The best is yet to come. So be strong, never give up, and have faith. Thank you for listening.
So my name is Annie, and I rent the Boston home for a little over a year and a half at this point, and this is my story. I was born October 8, 1961, joining my two sisters, Kathy and Susan. The only unusual event of my birth is that a few hours after my arrival, cousin Teddy was born in the same maternity ward. When presented to my mother, the nurse said, "The first thing this little girl needs is a hair bow." My parents had just purchased a new home in the town of Natick. We were the American dream, happily married couple, children, home in the suburbs, success. In the months that followed, Mom and Dad noticed I wasn't hitting the normal milestones of infancy. Sitting, rolling, crawling was proving to be very difficult for me. After evaluation, I was diagnosed as having cerebral palsy. My case appeared to be hemiplegia, affecting only my left side. As an adult, I explained my disability as follows. Cerebral palsy is an injury, not a disease. It is caused by a lack of oxygen to the brain, often during your own birth. Like a stroke, the amount of damage varies. Since diagnosis came well into my first year, the cause remains unknown. My case is reasonably mild, a weak left side with poor motor skills. Cognition, speech, and right side motor skills are considered normal. The outward signs of disability are significant limp and a left foot that turned inward. I wore an uncomfortable brace in an attempt to correct it. Even as a child, this shoe-obsessed girl recognized the cruelty of not having cute shoes. Every evening, Dad would help stretch out my spastic leg and foot muscles. It was a practice I both loved and hated. Loved because I had private time with Dad. Hated because he had to work hard to get those stiff muscles to loosen up. Nowadays, medication like baclofen helps with spasticity, but nothing was prescribed back then. So there we were, Dad sitting in his comfy chair, smoking a Viceroy cigarette, me sitting on the floor with my leg extended, getting the 1960s version of home physical therapy. During this time, my parents welcomed 4 more daughters. 18 months after my birth, Kristine was born. A year after that, twins Maureen and Jean. A few years later, Colleen rounded out our house of little women. The twins were born with Down syndrome and in very poor health. They had severe cardiac issues and were too ill to live at home. We lost Jean at age 1. Maureen passed away at age 4. We resumed life as a family of 7. Daily, my sisters and I would get up, eat breakfast, join our friends and neighbors on the walk to Brown School. I enjoyed school until some mean kids decided to label me. The name calling started in first grade, starting with peg leg and later gimp. It was muttered as kids passed in the hallways. I was so hurt, but pretended not to hear. Day after day, year after year, these painful comments eroded my self-esteem and confidence. I tried to talk to my parents about it. They told me I was fine and just like everyone else. Ignore it was their advice. My concerns felt unheard, so I stopped expressing them. The insecurities grew and festered. They are still part of my personality. My parents had the best of intentions. They always included me, but things had to be modified. On a cold winter day, we went to Uncle Paul's home on the lake. The whole family bundled up for a day of skating. I was told to join everyone on the ice, but skates wouldn't be allowed. Put your boots on and watch. I felt so left out. My sisters looked free and beautiful gliding around the ice. It triggered a thought I still carry. I will never be graceful. Things will never feel carefree and easy. It crushed me. In 5th grade, students could select an instrument with hopes of joining the concert band. I was looking forward to it. Big sister Kathy could sing. Susan excelled on her flute. What would my talent be? My parents had the difficult task of telling me that my options were few because of the limited use of my left hand. Dad had a great idea. As a child, he was stricken with polio. After a lengthy hospital stay, he needed to improve his lung strength. He played a trumpet to achieve that goal. He kept the instrument and realized it would be a successful option for me. My left arm was strong enough to hold the trumpet, and the right side fingers could easily press the 3 valves. So I took my hand-me-down trumpet and had enough lessons to become a band member. 5th grade musicians eager to join our 6th grade peers. I saw all the girls sitting together with their shiny new flutes and clarinets. I was tucked into the 2nd row of trumpets and saxophones, the only girl with boys sitting in front of, beside, and behind me. The same boys who teased me in class now had their victims surrounded on all sides. I felt alone and sad. I wanted to quit, but we had a rule in our house. We had to honor our commitments. So I played in the band for the remainder of the year, but stopped after that, never playing an instrument again. A few years later, I was not able to take the required typing class. Lack of fine motor skills prevented it. My frustration with school continued. In high school, I realized a clever trick. I would use my disability to convince the gym teacher that physical education was too hard. I was rewarded with a free period. Yes, I manipulated, but it saved me the embarrassment of everyone seeing the clumsy, uncoordinated girl who would never be good at sports. Mom and Dad recognized that I was emotionally lost. They told me a smaller school might provide a fresh start. Entering my junior year, I relocated to a small Catholic school 1 town over. I made a few friends. They would pick me up, and we would loaf around with little purpose or motivation. We would disregard curfew, sneak cigarettes and booze. This circle of friends provided something I desperately craved: acceptance. I didn't have to compete with my smart, graceful, talented sisters. I didn't have to be an onlooker of the cool kids in school who dismissed me as a gimp. Fortunately, I survived those tumultuous years. My teenage troubles never escalated to real danger, just enough to infuriate and frustrate my parents. In 1979, I graduated from high school and was accepted to Framingham State College, but only lasted 1 semester. School was so traumatic for me. I opted to leave it behind and join the adult world. My next step was to become a bank teller. It was a respectable job, and I was good at it. Within a few years, I was married and expecting our first child. My childhood home of Little Women morphed into the home of my 3 sons. Raising the boys was my purpose, my reason for living. Their well-being was my only concern. These active children kept me busy and focused. I rarely thought about cerebral palsy. When they were young, I ran a home daycare. As they grew, I took a job as an administrative assistant at our local high school. My children attended this school. I feared that my bully names might resurface. Would my boys be known as Gimp's kids? To my relief and delight, the name that stuck was Mama Betts. My name was now a term of endearment. 3 active boys kept our family busy for 20 years. Unknown to the kids, trouble was brewing in my marriage. Neither of us had the desire to fight for it, so with 2 kids in college and 1 in high school, Doug and I agreed to separate. I'd spend my free time working out and walking off my divorce. My body and psyche felt strong and renewed. Time passed, and in my late 40s, I started to experience groin pain. 49 years of walking with a limp had wreaked havoc on my left hip joint. I needed a hip replacement. On a warm April day in 2011, new titanium hardware replaced overworked bones. After 6 weeks of recovery and physical therapy, I returned to work healthy and refreshed. This renewal would be short-lived. While sitting at work one day, I felt a strange sensation. My right leg was numb. When walking, I relied on walls and bookshelves for support. One day, I reported for duty as site manager for a varsity soccer game. For years, I would grab my folding chair and binder and oversee high school athletics. This girl, who could never participate in sports, was tasked with overseeing our young athletes as they competed in theirs. Still numb, I struggled getting on and off the field. After weeks of this, alarm bells were ringing. Over the next few years, I would fall several times at work. The numbness was constant. It was also becoming difficult to lift my leg into the car. Growing very concerned, I contacted the surgeon who did the hip replacement. He quickly scheduled an appointment and x-rays. He told me that my surgery and follow-up exam indicated no signs of complications. He referred me to a neurologist. This would trigger a merry-go-round of doctors and diagnoses. Here's a sample. Neurologist number 1. The MRI indicates that you have lesions, but they look old, most likely related to your CP. I believe you are suffering from a pinched nerve, probably the result of a different walking gait after the hip replacement. I'm sending you for physical therapy and to a physiatrist. A physiatrist? This is the first time I've heard this term. Physiatrist. No, it doesn't look like a pinched nerve. It's obvious to me that you have cerebral palsy on your right side. She's not particularly interested when I say that these are new symptoms. In my 50-plus years on Earth, no one has ever suspected CP on my right side. She prescribes baclofen and 6 more weeks of physical therapy. She also advises me to put a 1-inch lift on my left shoe to compensate for leg length discrepancy. I disagree with her assessment, but adhere to her advice. The year is now 2014. My 3 sons are grown men. Michael is living in Rhode Island, engaged to be married. Tommy lives in Florida, and Christopher lives in South Carolina. In July, they meet up to celebrate Michael's bachelor party. They express serious concern when seeing firsthand how I am struggling. They return in September for the wedding, and concern elevates to alarm. I am supposed to walk myself down the aisle as part of the wedding party, but during the rehearsal, as I begin the march, it is clear I am unable to do so. With no walls or cane to rely on, that leg is frozen. I am unable to lift it. An immediate change is made. For stability, I forego the cute new sandals purchased for the occasion and wear my dirty sneakers instead. I plead with the photographer to make sure my feet are not visible in pictures. I'm grateful to have selected a full-length dress that hid them. My 2 sons, the best men, walk on either side of me. They offer their arms, and I hang on for dear life. I am so very sad, but try to hide it because this is the happiest day of Michael's life. As mother of the groom, I was looking forward to sharing a dance with Michael. He asked me to select the song. I chose My Wish by Rascal Flatts. He escorts me to the dance floor. We begin, simply swaying to the beat as he holds me up. It is a tender moment tainted by the stark realization that something is seriously wrong. Fear and devastation wash over me. Both Tommy and Chris decide to move back to Massachusetts, recognizing that I need more care. This decision brings all 3 of my children close to home. They become an integral part of my support system. As the year winds down, my right leg continues to feel numb, and that sensation spreads to my abdomen. Walking is getting more difficult. I rely on a quad cane for support. After work, I struggle to get to the car and lift my right leg into the vehicle. The spasticity fights me. I tie a scarf around my thigh to use as a hoist. One day, I can't safely move my right leg from the gas pedal to the brake. Driving is no longer safe. I have no diagnosis and an uncertain future. I am terrified. As a single woman, my job is essential for my finances. I request a leave of absence and am pleased to learn that I have amassed enough sick time to afford several paid months off. On New Year's Day, 2015, I wake up with a high fever and flu-like symptoms. I try to stand and move, but it's impossible. Home alone and terrified, I reach out to a neighbor. She comes over and we wait for an ambulance. An MRI reveals new lesions. Finally, years after my first symptom, I have a diagnosis. I have multiple sclerosis. It was not possible to return to work. MS appears to have attacked my right leg only. It's a cruel twist of fate that I have dual disabilities on opposite sides of my body. Ironically, the symptoms compete for my attention. I struggle with strong spasms. The one on my left CP side cause my muscles to recoil. The ones on my right MS side cause my leg to straighten and stiffen to the point of pain. I grow more and more dependent on a wheelchair. Remember that left hand that couldn't play an instrument or type? It also lacks the strength needed to propel a manual chair. Eventually, my doctor convinces me to get a power wheelchair. It breaks my heart, but provides much needed independence. I get by. The pandemic shifted the balance. It became impossible to find help. I was isolated, unable to care for myself. My family was very worried. My neurologist suggested that I look into admission at the Boston home. This idea overwhelmed me. I could not imagine leaving the familiarity of my chosen hometown. Needing the care of a skilled nursing facility left me feeling defeated. Next came a tough love conversation with my son. He told me that my loved ones were very worried about me and did not think I should live on my own. This was difficult to hear, but I appreciated his honesty. Begrudgingly, I applied, expecting to be placed on a lengthy wait list. To my surprise, there was an immediate opening. On an August day in 2022, I became a Boston home resident. Now, this girl from the suburbs is learning to be a city girl. I have friends here who encourage me to hop on the T and explore the wonderful culture around us. I have a dual disability and dual emotions. I allow myself to feel sorrow for what has been a lifetime of challenges. I don't know if I will ever feel comfortable living in a skilled nursing facility. I dream of a time when I can return to independence. If that day never comes, I will seek happiness and new experiences. I celebrate my incredible support system. My mom and sisters are constant cheerleaders. A few of them join me for lunch once a month after my infusion, and here today, by the way. My boys visit me often. A tremendous joy has been watching them all become dads. My family has grown to include 3 loving daughters-in-law and 4 grandchildren. Life is good. Thank you.
All right, stay here. Thank you so much, Annie. That was amazing. So we're gonna invite Kristine back up. That was beautiful, both of you. Thank you. So these two actually have not, even though they've both been working side by side independently, they've not heard each other's stories until today. So I wanted to start, and I will hold the microphone for both of you, and just bring it to your face. If either of you, no pressure, just wanted to say anything to the other, anything that resonated or struck you, or just any feedback you want to share.
You know, the unusual circumstance of this is that Kristine and I are also roommates here at the Boston home. So we did know a little bit of each other's story, but to hear Kristine's story in depth, it touched my heart, and I feel you, girl. I just, your story was amazing, and thank you for your bravery, really.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel the same way, Annie. Yeah, there's something weird and kismic about life that we ended up being roommates, and here we are talking and giving the voice and about MS to get this. But yes, I related to your story as well. I was also in the band. I was in the flute player, and I was inspired, and you inspired me. Everybody here inspires me. And I thank you for coming, and Annie has been a blessing. You know, they say there's a silver lining for everything in life. You know, I just lost my roommate in 5 years, and then this one comes into my life to brighten up my room. We got a rockin' bright room. Well, but very inspirational. Very much. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you, Kristine.
Thank you both. So I'm going to open it up to questions or comments from the audience. Just one observation I'll make first is that one thing I think that's really neat about this experience at the Boston home is that all of you live amongst each other, but there's probably so much about each other's stories that you don't know. So it's really nice to get a chance to go deep and really get to know people in that way. So I'm wondering if anyone has a comment. I think I can't bring the mic because I seem to be attached, but if you speak loudly, we can hear you. Comments, feedback for the storytellers, questions, something that resonated. Go ahead.
Just for both of you, you're both excellent storytellers and writers. I'm sure you wrote what you. Have you ever, either one of you, thought of expanding your story into a printable, publishable, or another story? You know, using your healthy brains to create in the written form.
I guess when I lost the use of my arms and right before the pandemic, I kind of like gave up on writing, but now that I know anything is possible, like I said, with your voice and your mind, or just with help, with love. And Vicky, who's the our incredible director of development here, was my scriber, and that happened, and I felt, wow, this can happen, and it inspired me. I might go back to writing.
I think you should.
I don't know if I ever really considered expanding on my story. However, the process for me, because a lot of my story started as a child, I've had feelings I haven't thought about since I was a child. And I think my biggest takeaway from this is how cathartic it was, and that maybe I'll consider journaling, which I've never done journaling. But just if nobody reads it but me, just jotting down my thoughts and giving myself a chance to exhale a little bit, I think would be something that I would consider in the future.
Excellent.
Yay. Thank you.